Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Simon Lara, CIO at SPS Poolcare. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyber, Lynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past theirs. That's where Cyberlinks comes in. We partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best prices. So whether it's managed SIM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you get the right solution at the right price. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyber, Lynx.com. And now back to our show. Simon, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about SPS Poolcare and your role there as CIO?
Sure. SPS Poolcare is a startup in the pool service industry. So it's very simple. We clean swimming pools. We also do some repair and other things as well. But the primary business is cleaning swimming pools. I am the CIO, and I am in charge of all the technology strategy, build out, design of how we meet our business's needs and customers' needs. We, like I said, a startup, 4 years old, and we are already number one in the country. We're the biggest pool service provider in the entire country, and very proud of that just after 4 years and continuing to grow. And there's part of us that thinks that we are a technology company, similar to others that monetize their technology through different means, and we seem to do so through pool service.
I mean, that's pretty, first of all, congratulations. That's fantastic. That's no small feat. And then especially in such a short period of time. And I think that industry, I think similar to like, but so many other, service industries, they're prone to having very small organizations because it works. It's, that you can start it up, you can start cleaning pools, mowing lawns, fixing computers, you name it. You can do that and keep your organization small, make a good living doing it. But I think, when you hear stories like this, where in 4 years you became the country's largest, I mean, that's really impressive. And obviously that is powered by technology and efficiencies. So, and as well, I mean, there must have been startup capital there, so everything was kind of done right. Can you kind of walk us through that? Like how did you accomplish that in 4 years? What was the technology like? What was the funding like? How did that work? Because that's pretty impressive.
Sure. Yes, we're a PE-backed consolidator. And as you mentioned, the industry is highly fragmented. It's about 99% fragmented, very small businesses. A lot of people who own their business start cleaning pools in the summer between college semesters, right? And they look around later on and like, you know what? I've built a kind of cool business here, right? They continue to run it and it grows and they do very well for themselves, as you mentioned. What we do is we bring enterprise level, best in class technology, supply chain, marketing, HR, all of those services to these companies. And so we buy them, they become ours, but then we deliver those level of business practices, right? Thereby, increasing efficiencies, as you mentioned, getting them run smoother, and then creating competitive advantages. The technology is a big differentiator for us. We've invested so much into it, for a lot of effort and funds into our technology. And it's really positioned us differently than our competition who simply doesn't have the funds to be able to invest in these type of things.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And it's interesting because I think that is the perfect model. A lot of PE money is flowing into the IT service industry in the same way, trying to replicate, really that model. That is the playbook. But I think where it falls apart on the IT side is that these companies, even when you're talking just smaller acquisitions, the problem is these IT companies build such a good relationship with their clients, and they've done so for so long, and the clients become used to, can become very, I guess, accustomed to that small, IT company providing them, a certain level of service. Then when you move to this bigger company, it's really hard for a large company to provide the same level of kind of personal service as a small company, right? That's a real challenge. But I think in the pool industry, come on. I mean, that's so great. As long as they come out, they clean the pool nicely. Yeah, I don't think you're really, you're not spending hours talking to your pool guy or pool gal, right? Your pool cleaner. You're just your pool gets cleaned, right? So that is a perfect, oh, that's ideal, right? So
Yeah.
and then I guess something I think is really interesting is, well, then down the line is the idea that you would then also sell this, or lease the technology to small businesses so they can have, this, and then and then now you target them for acquisition because, well, you're already using the system. You might as well come in, get a little payout, and and lighten your load. Is that part of the plan?
It's it's definitely been talked about. There's that technology and a few other efficiencies that we gain because of our size and scale that we are looking to potentially offer to other small businesses. That's nothing that's live yet. We're still putting things together. Like I said, we're 4 years old.
Yeah.
Well, now I think technically 4 years, 2 months old. So we're still putting a lot of the building blocks and core things together. So that stuff, yeah, that's out in the future. We're not really going to get to that. But earlier you mentioned, the personal relationships that people have, right? And when a big company comes in, how hard that is to manage. We really put a lot of effort and we strive to maintain those relationships. So there's a lot of local level flavor. We don't centralize call centers. We don't centralize a lot of things that interact with the customer, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of local flavor. We talk to people, we work with them, and our clients and customers, they come to love us, right? It gets to the point where I've heard stories where, our pool guy goes there and they've made breakfast for us, right? We know the dog's names. We know, how the kids are doing in sports and so on. So we really do build a personal relationship because that's what's important to maintaining customers and a great relationship with them. Um, and so, yeah, it really helps us scale. We don't, as much as we corporatize some of our back end processes, we know that the real value is those relationships because people are trusting us to go into their backyard,
Oh,
right?
100%. So this is really interesting. At some of these like really high-end Michelin, like three-star Michelin restaurants, what they'll do is the staff will take notes on the diners. And so you may go in there once, and as you talk to the different, waiters and waitresses that come by and kind of serve you, it's interesting. They will take these notes, and you may go in like months later, and they pick up the conversation as if like, and so they've taken the notes. So I'm kind of curious, it's one thing when you're a small shop and it's like, oh yeah, well, you personally remember Jane and her dog and everything. But now have you built that into the technology stack to where they're like, hey, take these notes. What's the dog's name? What's the, what are they, and filling out the notes so that if, so that they've got that next time and you kind of formalizing this sort of process?
To a point, yes. Obviously, we have a CRM that
Mhm.
tracks a lot of the things that happen with the customer throughout their lifetime and life cycle with us. But what we try to do, as well as we optimize our routes, is we try to keep the same technician with the same people, right? The
Yeah.
same customers. That way, they get to know who it is, and they build those relationships. And we train our team to be very personable, right? Be very professional, and so on. So it really works well for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really key because, where it falls apart in like the IT industry, and we've seen it time and time again, is that you lose that personal connection, right? I don't know why more of them don't do this kind of small team kind of approach where it's like, no, no, this is your technician, right? This is your pool tech, this is your IT. Great. You're going to work with them. And you keep that connection. Makes perfect sense. So kudos to you guys. I think that's clearly it's working, and I think that's fantastic. So let me ask you, the topic du jour, of course, is AI, as it should be. So, what are you guys doing in terms of AI? Is that something that you leverage to help you, with your growth at this stage? What's your view of AI, and what are you guys doing to kind of utilize it and help you?
Absolutely. So AI is a big part of what we're doing, particularly in our reporting. We have built what we call Clarity. which is our internal reporting tool. On top of it, we have now introduced AI. So we can now ask our data, and we pull data from all of our various applications. We can now ask our data and our stories and figure out what our insights are, which pools are going to turn green, which trucks need a brake pad change next month, and everything else you can think of around chlorine dosages, writing job descriptions for technicians that will perform very well or have the longest tenure based on our history and all of our data. We can now figure out how to author things like a job description or a job posting for recruiting. And again, the vision behind it, and it's starting to happen, is that our employees wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with this great idea and then run over and go ask it a question. And we're able to deliver those type of things. So that's one big piece of it. And again, that's very early stages. And some other things that we're doing is we focused on revenue generation. AI obviously has the power to do a lot of things really fast. I'm seeing a lot of my peers focus on internal cost cutting. So they're automating processes, they're automating things like their help desk, right? They're automating various AP processes and things like that. And while that's attractive, for us, we're in growth mindset. So you're limited by definition of your costs. So if you just take AI and you say, okay, I'm going to eliminate, let's just make up something, 50% of my help desk, right? Well, that was already an incremental cost to your business. It was already less than your revenue. And even if you maximize that and it overdid what you thought it was going to do, and you underestimated the power of your AI, your help desk, and you were able to eliminate 100% of your help desk, which obviously will never happen, but let's assume it did that. The best you could get out of it was the total cost of your help desk, which was already limited by a ceiling because of your cost structure. So when looking
Bingo.
at AI and we looked at the power of it, we felt like it was more advantageous for us to use in a revenue generation
Yep.
mindset, right? In applications. So we went to there first because there's no limit on the amount of revenue, right?
Yep.
There's a limit on cost that I could save because it's already built in and defined by my cost structure. So we'll get to that later. Obviously, we'll reduce costs and things like that. I don't know about eliminating anybody's jobs. I'm very big on people. We're a people company. We're, the cliche, we're a family. We really are. Um, it's great. We're all in the office group. We all go to the office every day. We don't do the remote work thing. I'm remote now, but I'll be in there in a few minutes. But yeah, we get in the office. We have great culture. We have great team chemistry, which is something that I think lacks in so many companies, which is a big part of our technology leadership and executive leadership team as well. But yeah, so AI, getting back to that, we focused on one, getting insights about our business to drive revenue, and then we put it in certain places that accelerate certain things like customer communications, managing certain things around pools and those type of things that would help us generate revenue rather than cut costs.
I love that. I mean, I think for me, that is the 100% the right perspective. And it's unfortunate, and we've seen it time and time again where a company decides, hey, look, times are tough, we're going to cut back. Times are tough. That is when you need to be pushing forward even more. It should always be growth mindset. And yeah, at the same time, can we be more efficient on our costs and everything? Fine. But you're not going to cut your way out of a recession. You're not going to cut your way into growth. That doesn't even make sense. So kudos to you. I think that's once again you just nailed it. I think that's such a great way of looking at it. And more people really need to do that. And I think for a lot of people, it's scary when you start thinking that way, especially when you're not, say, private equity backed. But it's great because you've got the right playbook, you've got the right backers, and it shows that it works. And so I think more people need to hear these stories of like, yeah, that's right. That's the perspective. Don't be scared and start cutting, because when you do that, all you're doing is you're just gonna shrink your organization, because that your mindset has gone from growth to preserve. And we know nothing stays the same. You're either growing or you're shrinking. It's really hard. And very seldom do you ever just stay the same. So I love that. Okay, so for me, I think I'm more of a security guy. Well, I'm kind of both. I'm just a big geek. I love all things technology. But when it comes to AI, I love where AI is taking us on the security end because I think AI came kind of hit the zeitgeist, if you will, when as ChatGPT came out and the bad guys started using it. Suddenly, with the advent of ransomware, or the I should say the prevalence of ransomware, suddenly everybody started realizing that, wait, security is a real issue for everybody. The bad guys are using AI, and oh shit, we need to be using AI as well. But I think the challenge was, how do we use AI to secure ourselves? And so for me, I'm a huge proponent of AI in security. So companies like Darktrace that are doing awesome stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's like my new
Mhm.
favorite toy. Love that because it's exactly what you think, right? So great, we're going to use AI for email. Cool. It looks at it, so much better than the traditional methods of like filtering out. Oh, like so I absolutely love that. And I'm curious for you guys, as CIO, you've got to run everything. Is AI a part of your security side as well? Is that something you guys are exploring, something you're doing? Yeah, so how are you guys doing on that?
There's a few tools that we have that obviously everybody's bringing AI to their portfolio and to their product line. So there's a few tools that we have that do have AI infused components, right? A lot of these are the traditional products, and so the balance that we have to look at, and it goes back to the same thing we had in cloud, right? Is there are new players that are AI first, right? They start in AI, and so they're able to be more nimble and maybe build a product that might perform better, right? Compared to someone like a Palo Alto
Right.
or a Cisco or whoever, a Sophos. It doesn't matter, right? All these various Barracuda, right?
Yep.
You know, but the alternative is if you go with one of those products or companies that wasn't born in the AI world, you know, they have more history, they have more experience, they have more resilience, right? So you have to balance: do I want the experience in security versus do I want the cutting edge, nimble, someone who's lived in that world? And this, we saw the same thing in cloud, right? We were born in the cloud. Everyone else is migrating to the cloud, and you have various ways to go. Like, okay, well, this born in the cloud is very good for the things that cloud give me, but if my ERP that I'm choosing doesn't have all the feature sets, isn't as resilient as one of the traditional ERPs that wasn't in the cloud, we have to balance, what do we really need? And for us, we are sort of picking and choosing various tools as part of our technology stack and security mindedness,
Yep.
to say, okay, in this one, yeah, we'll take that cutting edge young player that is, AI first to help us in this front. And in other places, like, no, we want someone with extensive background,
Yep.
knowledge, and experience in that world, that we bring them in. And as we merge them together, we feel like we're building a pretty solid portfolio of security.
Yeah, no, I think that is 100% the way to do it. That is clearly it. Those that were, especially the new ones, like you take a look at, there's some like once again, Dark Traces. Like you're now talking like 13 years old. They were, so they've got a long list, a long history of it, if you will. 13 years, long enough, I think. But then you look at some of the newer players, and you have to balance that. It's like, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think the other thing to balance is when you're talking AI, it's the LLM versus the machine learning, and there's a time and place for each, right? And I think that the challenge for a lot of the old companies that are now wanting to be AI is they're just bolting on an LLM to everything, and now wait a sec, I get it, it's the cool new thing, but that's not one that LLM in security, if used, improperly, opens you up to all kinds of prompt injection issues. And so that's really not the right thing. And so, in certain areas, in cases, it's the machine learning you want to. So I think people have to get educated on the difference. It's not just like oh, AI, cool. AI is awesome. I love AI. AI works. Okay. That there's a tool for every job. You use the wrong tool, the job's not going to work out so well. A hammer doesn't do a great job with screws. It just doesn't. It's a
Right.
great with nails. And so I love your approach there and kind of balancing that. And I think that's the real challenge facing, CIOs and CISOs today is where do you fall on that? And I think there's a very wide spectrum of different products from various organizations. So it's a challenge, especially now. There's like a bajillion different products out there, to kind of sift through. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge. Now, you have an interesting approach and perspective on best practices, and I'd love for you to share that with everybody because I think this is when's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Well, first off, when it comes to security, we follow all the best practices. Right. So that one's a given, right?
Like,
That one's a given. But one of the things that we look at as our success is not just the technology, because you can give the same technology to five different companies trying to solve the same problem, and you're going to end up with five different results. Someone's going to hit it out of the park. Someone else is going to have a terrible, time and experience with that product. Three are going to be somewhere in the middle, right? And the same thing happens with everything else. And part of our world in technology is not just to innovate what the tech does, right? What we can deliver in capabilities. But we're also looking innovating in our leadership style in what we do to drive the best results. When you look at various arenas, and by the way, my history, I'm also a basketball coach. I've coached basketball for over
nice.
20 years. My undergrad degree is in sport coaching and sports psychology. So
Wow.
I've taken sports psychology and applied it to my corporate leadership and corporate world. And it's yielded very great results, I think. Um, and so, what we try to look at from a best practice standpoint is we understand we're in a competition. And if you look at all of our competitors and everyone is reading the same books, getting the same consultants, following the same things, the bar is all set and everyone's aiming for the same thing. Well, at that point, that's no longer best. That's average by definition. And we take a look at those things and say, okay, one, I can read your playbook because I know what you're reading. All right. I can go read it too. And if I know what you're doing, that opens the doors, opportunities for me to look for differentiators, ways to do something different, ways to do things better. And when we apply sports to it, it's we're here to win, right? How do we win? And psychology and sports psychology really lends itself to that. There's a lot of companies out there now starting to turn into things like XLAs and connecting with people and ITIL4 and all this stuff, and that's great. And they're going as far as, in some cases, organizational psychology, which is great. It helps us work together, right? But sports psychology helps us win together. And the big thing around sports psychology and winning together is understanding what team chemistry is. Team chemistry is not team spirit. It's not teamwork. It's not we wear the same shirts or we're here to help each other. That's not what team chemistry is. If we watch any type of sports broadcast, you'll hear people talk all the time about how the chemistry is great on this team. In fact, the teams that win championships aren't the ones with the most talent. It's the ones with the most team chemistry, right? And we see it every broadcast, any football game, any basketball game, hockey, baseball, they talk about it. But when you go into the corporate world, you never hear that term ever.
Yep.
You hear
Yep.
things like synergies and empathy and whatever, right? You hear all this
Yep.
stuff, but you never
Culture.
hear team chemistry,
Yep.
culture, right? You hear all these things. It's like, well, why is that void, right? Why is that there? And so what I've been doing over my career is taking what I've learned from building teams and successful basketball teams and applying that to the corporate culture. And we're building real team chemistry. And so there's a lot of things that we do that are different than those best practices. For instance, ITIL is one that we take a look at. We see how everyone else is building service management, and we say, yeah, there's a whole different way to do that. Very different, and in fact, yields much better results. And we can demonstrate it, right? We can show here's the numbers, here's the results. This is what's way better. And a lot of it comes from doing things like one, building that culture, understanding you're in a competition, being aggressive and deliberate in your curiosity, trying to get things better, right? You automatically infuse things like continual improvement, those type of things into your culture, and then caring about each other. The number one sign of team chemistry is I care about you and your goals more than I care about mine. Right. And so even within my team, here's just a little snippet of what we do. On my team, everyone's goals are clear to everyone else, and we reward the team when someone else achieves their goal. So if you and I are on the same team, I get my reward, my bonus, my stipend, my extra day of PTO when you achieve your goal.
Hmm.
And you get it when I achieve mine. And if we have 5 people, 10 people, 20 people on the team, now there's 19 people trying to help you achieve your goal. Because when you get it, we all get our bonus.
That's
Right.
cool.
And so we start to care about each other and little nuances, little things happen. I'll start to help you. I understand where you might be weak. I understand where you're strong. I understand how to shield you from distractions. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to help you achieve your goal. And we all have our purpose. We all know what we're coming to do every day, and we're connected to the mission, right? I see very often technology teams, they think they just work tickets, or they think they just, build solutions or make sure the network is running or make sure that the bad guys don't get us, right? And it's like, no, what you're really doing is helping us achieve our mission, right? You're helping families, in our case, be able to enjoy family time, in their backyard with their pool, right? Seamlessly without any issue at all. They just walk back there, no friction, jump right in the pool. They don't have to worry about cleaning anything, right? So those are the kind of things that we're doing, right? So with all the team chemistry and all that infused in, there's also things like metrics that we don't measure because there's so many metrics that actually harm chemistry. So we got rid of all of them. We don't do SLAs. SLAs are, to me, harmful to your business. We never call our teammates customers, right? At that point, you have a customer relationship. That's nowhere, you're never going to have team chemistry in a customer relationship, right? So there's a lot of stuff that we do from a philosophical standpoint that really trickles down through everything that we do, how we measure stuff, how we behave, how we, again, like I said, tickets, how we build our solutions, how we change management. All of those things that we do are almost in 100% contrast to how everyone else does them. And it's done with intent to be different.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what do you call them if it's not a customer relationship? What do
What's
you
my
call them?
teammate?
Teammate. Got
Yeah.
it.
And if at worst, employee, right?
Right.
But they're my teammates, right? We
Yep.
do different things, right? Just like offensive lineman and a wide receiver does two different things, but
Yep.
they're teammates. If the offensive line treated their quarterback like he's a customer, oh,
Yep.
we're blocking for you. You're my customer. They're not going to win any games.
Yeah.
Just this is not going to be that way. They're just not going to do it, right?
That's awesome.
And so with that, we understood what it took to win was chemistry. So now, how do we infuse that and continue to foster that team chemistry culture throughout our entire organization? And I've been doing it in technology for, I don't know, 20 years now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? So we often kind of ask people about their origin stories, like we're superheroes. But you were certainly the first that we've had that that comes from the sports side. So if you could you tell us kind of your origin story, how where you came from, how you got into tech, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I fell into it just like almost everybody else, right? Um, it's kind of a long story, but
We
my
got time.
first, yeah, my I was in college as a young kid, maybe 19 years old. My parents got sick, heart attack and cancer,
Oof.
and I had to get a job. And I didn't have a degree. I was still, I think, a sophomore in college, maybe. And I had heard at the time that you could get a job in this thing called IT without a degree. I didn't know anything. None of my parents had been to college. We just weren't that type of family. And I was like, okay, great. What's IT? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's working with computers. I was like, great. I don't own a computer. I work with them at school, college. I do stuff, but I don't really, I don't own one. I don't know anything about them. And I ended up getting a job interview through someone I knew, and they took a chance on me. And I studied as much as I could, learned as much as I could right away. And what was really cool is I happened to come into this organization. We were at Novell Netwear Shop. This is how
Yeah.
long ago this
Going
was.
back. Yep.
Novell Netwear with like a the bus network with the the terminators and coax cable, that
Uh-huh.
stuff, right? We were in
Yep.
that world. IPX, SPX was
Yep.
the protocol that did everything. And we had bought a brand new Windows NT4 server,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, look, we got this new shiny server, and I'm a help desk guy, and all the admins are now looking at this thing, and they're like, look how cool it is. It does this, it does that, and all these different things, right? And I'm like a puppy. I'm just like a sponge, learning everything I can. So I'm like, okay, what is that? What does this do? And they're all fascinated with it. And maybe a week or so in, I'm like, well, you guys don't know this? And they're like, no, we're still learning it. I was like, so you're starting where I'm starting? They're like, yeah, why? And I was like, oh, okay. So I immediately went, bought a book, cranked through that, got my MCSE, and within 2 months, they promoted me to be the systems admin. They said,
Nice.
you're teaching us how to do this. You're hungry. You're spending every weekend reading books on NT4. You're teaching us how to use it. Why don't we just make you the admin? So that's what happened. And then that just continued to go on and on
Nice.
and on. Eventually, I worked my way up to, I guess, I don't know what the title was exactly, but lead systems analyst at a data center for a college. And then I quit and I got bored and I started a business. And I was in New Orleans, Louisiana. And my started my business. It was fun. I was having a great time.
What kind of
And
business?
her 2005.
Oh no, what kind?
Oh, I was an automotive broker.
Okay, cool.
So I negotiated car sales
Yep.
for people who wanted to buy a car. Just very
Love it.
simple, right?
Yep, easy.
Um, 2005, we were growing. Things were going well. The business was taking off. And then you may remember Hurricane Katrina uh, came through, destroyed everything. I lost everything I owned. I
Oof.
was basically homeless. Um, and I found myself through various ways of trying to figure out where to land and live in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And there, I was like, well, I can't start my business again. Let me go back into IT. There wasn't a lot of IT jobs in Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what do I do? What they did have in Hattiesburg was the University of Southern Mississippi. So I was like, well, I'll go back to college and finish my degree. As I went back there, I found out that there was a such thing as a coaching and sports psychology degree. I was like, oh, what is that? Right? They're like, oh, teach how to be a coach. I was like, well, I love coaching basketball. I've been coaching basketball at like YMCA, rec league type stuff, throughout my life. I was like, oh, I get the chance to really do it, like at the high school or college level. Yeah, I was like, sign me up for that. So went to Southern Miss, graduated 2007, in sports coaching, sports psychology, and then went on to coach high school basketball for a number of years.
Okay.
Had a lot of fun doing that. That was great, living my dream of coaching basketball. And I was a high school teacher. And then in 2011, my wife and I think she was my fiance at the time, my wife and I decided to move, and we moved to Austin, Texas, sort of at random. We came here with no friends, no family, no job, no place to live. Just showed up and found a place to live. And Austin at the time was so IT heavy. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, maybe I'll get back into technology. So now I go back into technology, and wasn't long to where I worked my way into leadership positions, and I brought all of my coaching experience and knowledge into the corporate world. So that's where all that came from. So since about 2012, I've been doing this whole sports psychology inside corporate America.
I love it. Honestly, it's the first I'm hearing, you get some sports analogies, right, from time to time, but the real kind of in-depth sports psychology and actually applying it and that being the core fundamentals of the philosophy behind your day-to-day. That's the first I'm hearing about it. And I honestly, if you haven't, thought about it, you might think about putting together a book, write a book about it because I think it's a great topic and I think it would sell gangbusters. I'd love to have you, like keep exploring this. I know we don't have tons of time left, but I would love to keep, exploring the sports psychology of it and going down that because I think it's such a cool idea. And it works out so well. And as you look at, I mean, if for me, having gone to school for business management and, I'm constantly reading, books on business management. I love the concept and, that there's so many different schools of thought, but and again, there's references to sports. There's like sports analogies, but at its core, it's not the sports psychology, but it makes more sense that you use sports psychology than let's call it business psychology,
Yeah.
it does. So
Well,
yeah.
if you think about it, sports psychology is meant to have athletes perform at their highest level,
Mhm.
right? And there's all types of analogies that mirror corporate world. When there's a major outage, right? That's when I need you to be at your best.
Yep.
There's a major incident, and sports psychology is this. We use the same thing when preparing someone for the championship game or for the Olympics, right? Consider the Olympics. Someone who trains their entire life, and they get to this one moment, and let's say they're running track, they perform for 20 seconds,
Yep.
right, of their entire life. And how well can they perform in those 20 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And so you think about that. You think about sports psychology helping athletes come back from injury,
Yeah.
right? And having them get through the mental hurdles of coming back from injury and being able to perform at their best. That's the same as coming back from a layoff, right? Someone who's been laid off in the market, right? And you bring them back. Or we're on FMLA and they're coming back into work. How do we uh, build the environment so that they feel safe yet challenged, right, in such a way to get them into what we call flow state. So
Yep.
in America, we like to call it in the zone,
Yep.
but in sports psychology, it's called flow. And it's a mental state where you actually perform above your normal capacity,
Mhm.
right? And how do we get that to happen through various different things of team climate, atmosphere, psychological safety, yet psychological challenges, right?
Yeah.
So you feel like there's something there that you have to go for. And there's a lot of stuff into it. And when you bring that in, you can get the most out of your team. One of the things that I do, just like I said, I have people care about each other's goals. And I learned this from coaching basketball. I had a team that we played pretty well. We had a good team, but there were moments where at the end of the game, we sort of played a little bit of hero ball. We tried to give it to the best player and let them go get it. And it just didn't really work for us. We weren't winning. We were losing some of those close games at the end of the game. And I had this random idea one day to give out index cards during a scrimmage. So I called our guys in the scrimmage. I wrote index cards down that said 3 assists, 4 rebounds, take a charge, 6 points. And I randomly handed out index cards, right? And I said, okay, this is your team. I had two different teams, right, playing each other in scrimmage. This is group one, group B, group two. Here's your goals. Now, if he reaches his goal, none of you have to run laps. But if he doesn't reach his goal, you're running laps. If he doesn't reach his goal, you're all running laps. And I did that same thing where I rewarded the team for someone else reaching their goal. And they all looked and shared their goals. Okay, we got it, right? Huddle up, let's go. And what you started to see was people working for each other, right? Oh, I know this guy needs 2 assists. I know he needs a rebound. Or this guy needs to score. And it was sometimes people who weren't great at scoring,
Yeah.
but the team worked really hard and learned what they were good at, what their nuances were, all the little subtleties. And they built such great team chemistry when they cared about each other's goals, right? And that's what it's all about. And so when, our technology team comes to work, we understand the business. I hire business people first, technology people second. So we understand what marketing is talking about. We understand what finance is talking about. We understand what supply chain is talking about. And we speak their language, right? We care about their goals, not ours. We care about theirs, right? And even internally, we care about each other's, right? And so what that creates is that chemistry, right? In a basic support, let's go through a support story. Very typical, happens every day. Let's say you have to print a contract for potential client $10 million, but they got to get on a flight in 30 minutes and the printer's not working,
Yeah.
right? So you call your help desk, and let's imagine you're animated, right? You might even throw some choice words in there. Who cares, right? But you're animated. You're mad at the printer. It's high stakes. Help me, help me, help me. In a typical IT environment, they're taught to de-escalate the call, right? They're going to calm down. It's okay, Matthew. It's all right. We're going to solve the problem. And let's say they solve the problem, the technology. Who cares what it is? Restart the spool. Who knows? Then they're going to ask you about the technology. Is the printer working? Printer the test page. Does it work? Yes. Then they're going to send you a survey the next day to tell them how they did, right? And right now, that sounds like a great experience. But what happens is that's a customer service experience. And I'm now serving you over an invisible counter. So it's you and me, and we're doing this, right? With technology. I'm handing you a working printer. We take a completely different approach, right? What we do when you call my guys, instead of de escalating, they're going to match your energy. They say, oh, yeah, that is a big problem. I'm in it with you. I hate that printer too. I'm going to fix it right away. So now instead of being like this or two people opposed to each other, now you're shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
Right. And we're looking at the same perspective. We're looking at the same printer. And in fact, I don't even care about the printer. I care about the contract getting signed.
Yep.
Right. Because that's what you care about. So that's what I care about. So we match your energy. We don't de escalate you. In fact, by de escalating you, I am subconsciously telling you that you are wrong for feeling the way you're feeling.
Yep.
And you're not. You're exactly right for feeling how you feel. In fact, I feel it too. I'm with you. Right. So we don't empathize, we synergize. That's what we call it. So we match that energy. We solve the problem. And I don't ask you if the printer works. I ask you, did he sign the contract? Yes. Right. Then I combine a high five you for closing that deal. Right. And I care more about you closing the deal than the technology. And if you do that over time, it builds team chemistry. Right.
Okay.
And if you think about the mental state that you're in, just imagine you're calling your ISP when the internet is down. And let's assume they're a great ISP and they give you great customer service. When the phone is ringing and you're waiting on them to answer, think about the mental state and your expectations of that call, right? Even though you think it's going to be great customer service. Now, I want you to think about the mental state of you having the phone in your hand, calling your brother when you're on the side of the road with a flat tire. Still high stakes, right? Still have expectations for help, but a completely different mindset.
Yep.
Right? What's in your heart and what's in your mind is completely different, your mental state. And that's the mental state our employees have when they work with our technology team. Because they don't feel like I'm calling someone for great support. They feel like I'm calling my boys because they got my back. Right?
That's awesome.
And it's a completely different mental state when you're calling your brother versus calling your ISP. And you might, again, be animated, you might, whatever, but he cares about you getting off the side of the road, right? He's going to come out and do whatever it is. You don't have SLAs. You're not holding him to some kind of nonsense metrics. You're not going to send them a survey later. None of that stuff, right? All of those things that people use to measure success are actually harming them. They're actually limiting their potential because they've created customer service relationships. So everything we do in all of our technology, the capabilities, the applications we choose, our change management, our support, our service design, everything we do is built around team chemistry, sports psychology, understanding we're in a competition and that we're here to win. Right? That's how we do everything that we do. And we think it yields much better results.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You're clearly, succeeding at what you're doing. I mean, and it makes such perfect sense when both sides make sense. Let's go back to your example of de-escalating, right? The traditional, be the calming voice, be the therapist, and kind of talk them off the ledge makes sense. But let's think about it. Does that work with your spouse? Like when they're having it, like, are you kidding me? Like that's not
Right.
going to work, right? If they're animated about something and you're like, you hit the nail on the head. It's like you're invalidating their feelings. Like that is they weren't right to feel that way. Of course, they're right to feel that way. And if you were in their position, you'd feel the same way. If you were them, you'd feel the same way. So what do you want? You want, like you said, your brother, your teammate to be right there with you, on that. And it's so funny. We bought into that logic, I think, as a whole, culturally, like nationwide. I think
Mhm.
we've largely bought into that failed premise, and it's a false premise. That is not how we should be interacting with people. It should be when somebody's got a problem, you're right there with them. It is your problem too. You're just as pissed off. You're just as animated. And you know what? We're going to get this together. You've joined them on their team where they're at to accomplish their goal. And that's what teammates do. That is freaking brilliant. I love
Yeah,
that. I
because
mean,
we win together, lose together,
100%. And
right?
and it's so funny because this applies on the most, on the macro and the micro level. No matter where you take this in the organization, the interactions, you know, look at group projects, right? Everybody always like I think it's really easy for corporate America to go back and look at high school and the group projects. And you've got the kids who are doing all the work, then you've got people who aren't doing work, and it creates this adversarial situation within the group, right? Within the team, and it doesn't work. And so it's really funny, and I think that's where a lot of people who weren't into sports, they get their idea of teamwork is from group projects, and that you see that in corporate America, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people who didn't kind of grow up in sports. And I think this is why a lot of people who did grow up in sports do end up succeeding in, later in life, because you never get out of that mindset. Being a good teammate and playing to win are fundamental. But it's at odds with what the corporate psychology. It goes about it the wrong way. And I love this. I think we could go on and on about this, and I would actually really love to. I'd love to kind of deep dive into some more of these topics, because I think we're just scratching the surface. I do think you've got an amazing book in you that I don't know if you're interested in writing it, but I hope you do, because I will be right there, with the first copy.
I
And
think I'm writing a book, and I
you
think it'll
are.
come out in about 60 days. Is
No
where
shit.
I'm at.
Well,
So yeah, we're
um,
pretty close.
that's fantastic. I would
Yeah.
love to, first of all, I'd love to get a copy and then have you on the back on the show, for the launch, and discuss it in kind of in detail and kind of go over things with people, because I think this is absolutely fantastic. Simon, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I do hope you come back on when your book is ready to launch, because I think what you're sharing here is invaluable, and people need more of these ideas and these lessons and the psychology in their day-to-day at work. So kudos to you. Um, Before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about SPS?
Yeah, SPSpoolcare.com is our website. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Simon Lara. I think it's comma MBA. So MBA from UT. Welcome. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and feel free to follow me, chat me. I'm an open book. I'm sharing these ideas. Again, I'm writing a book. I'm going to share all these with the rest of the world. I'm not hoarding them, because I do feel like we could be much better as an industry, if we start to operate under a new premise, right? So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to come back on. This was tons of fun. I love talking about this stuff. And when the book comes out, I'll be happy to let you know.
Awesome. Well, until then, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.